Hello and welcome back to Off Track Podcast with me, Dave Neal. This week, proudly sponsored by On the Podium Prizes. A massive, massive thank you to Glenn and Andrew for coming on board with this week's amazing show that we've got for you. Head over to onthepodiumprizes.com to check out the great competitions that they have. You've got to be in it to win it, and there are some amazing prizes to be had. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram too. Just search for On the Podium Prizes. Buy a couple of tickets and good luck. You never know, you could be a winner. This week's show is an absolute peach. We have a national treasure. He is British motorcycle racing royalty, and I can't wait to bring him to you. Before I do, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Every subscription makes a massive difference. Just hit subscribe below, ding the bell, and there we have it. It's as easy as that. But that's enough from me. A massive thank you to On the Podium Prizes, but here he is, without further ado. It's the fantastic Roger Marshall. Enjoy.
Roger Marshall, welcome to Off Track. So good to see you, mate. How are you?
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, I've been, I think both been looking forward to this. It's been a while since we did the one with Roger Burnett, and we're back in his office, and thanks for picking me up.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm really good. I've just had a mega weekend. It was cold, but we did the Newark show, and I linked up with my old sparring partner, Wayne Gardner, who first come to live with me a long time ago. And we only ever meet up now and again, well, every year at Silverstone GP and maybe somewhere else through the year, but we never get a chance to catch up anymore and to sit down 2 nights in the Premier Inn at Newark and thaw out a bit and catch up on some stories and have a glass of wine. It was great. And we were both shocked the amount of people who turned up to see us at the show, because, you know, sometimes you think people forget you, but, you know, a lot of people are like me and Wayne, who have a lot of history in the sport and followed it all our life. So, you know, thank you very much to everyone who turned up and we signed stuff for and had pictures. You made us feel great and feel like stars again.
How wonderful, Reg. I saw the photos and it looks such an amazing turnout for 2 great fellas. I've got a lot of time for WG, but you and I, we've got a great friendship. We're quite fortunate that way. Yeah. And it was so good to see it for both of you.
We were pretty shocked on the first morning because we're only 2 minutes up the road. I said to Wayne, yeah, we can leave now. We're not on stage till 10. Flipping heck. We were queuing off the A46. I thought, oh, heck. You know, and the organisers, I think they a bit caught out on the Saturday. And anyway, they got everybody in and then over Spillfield. And yeah, it was a great success. And if any of the organisers watch this, thanks. You did a fantastic job and looked after us amazingly well, and everything was super organised. It's a great venue.
It's not one I've been to. I've not made it out that far before. I know that they've had some big stars there. It's not your first time there. You've done a couple there, haven't you?
I've done it once before.
You've done once before?
On my own.
Yeah.
And, but it was much better with Wayne. As people kept saying, we were a good double act.
Well, you got such a rich history with Wayne, haven't you? We dabbled in it a little bit when we sat just over the way there with Roger, and it was a massive thank you to Roger for letting us use his office while he's not here and up at Laceby Manor. So thank you, Roger, much appreciated. The story goes right back, doesn't it, to when WG first came across and the Marowak, and there's a big history between you.
Yeah, I think I was a bit gutted at the end of 1980. I've been 3 years with George Beale. I thank you very much, George, anyway, for picking me up after the Machin Saunders garage packed up and the Percy Tate disaster. So at the end of 1980, George says, right, I'm packing up now, lad. You know, Roger Burnett was mechanic for me that year. We'd converted an old milking shed. We had an amazing season on the 750 Yamaha. Just the 2 of us, and his brother Ian Burnett was involved, and just a van, and we were leading 3 championships that year at one time. But George says he's winding down, and he thought, obviously I was around the age of, well, I was 30. So he said he thinks I'm coming towards the end of my career, which didn't bother me, and I respect George for giving me a lifeline. And obviously it was a funny time at the end of there because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I got a phone call out the blue from Rat Motorcycles in London, who Graham Crosby had a lot to do with. He imported Marowak products. And Rat Motorcycles said Marowak have contacted us from Japan and they would like you to ride for them in Daytona and do the British Championship on this aluminium frame bike. So I said, wow, no money involved, but just a great opportunity. Yeah. So obviously, not going into a lot of detail, I flew to Daytona for the race over there. Before we went to the paddock, there was a chat show with the late Chris Carter, who was a fantastic journalist and a great commentator. And he said that we've got people coming and you're going to meet Wayne and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I went to this lovely hotel and I was at the bar, and then we were introduced, and I'll never forget, Wayne looked to me and he looked me up and down, and I went to shake hands and nothing happened. And he just thought, I think he thought, who's this old fart? And I thought, who's this Australian little shit? And and that's how it was. I don't think we passed a comment on the night. And then we went to the garage and we practiced and we raced, and there was no communication at all. He was quite arrogant, as some Australians can be. And anyway, I came back to England, and about a week later, I was contacted by Rat Motorcycles. Could you put Wayne up? I said, no, I don't even like him. I said, I don't want him in the house. And at that particular time, obviously I was down on my knees. I was in a Tide Farm cottage with just an SE stove and no radiators and single glazing a 50p electric meter. So it was a freezing little house. So anyway, they begged me to put him up for a couple of days. So basically I put him up, and a week or so later he flew over, got a train to King's Cross, then the train to Market Raisin in Lincolnshire. It used to come direct from King's Cross. So, and it was snowing. A lot of people have heard the story, but some will still be amused. I was there in my gold Granada waiting for the train to come in, wrapped up like you wouldn't believe. The snow was coming down the platform. It was blowing a gale. It was about -2. Wayne comes off the train with a little brown case, Marowak t-shirt, shorts and flip-flops. And the flip-flops were wired together with locking wire. I couldn't believe it. Of course, I had to take him back to this freezing cottage and get him some clothes and get him sorted. And that was the start of our relationship. And it was amazing as time went on how we bonded and how we respected each other. And our friendship now is so strong, it's unbelievable. I mean, Wayne's had a lot of bad press in the past, and I get it, because he was arrogant and he was a believer in himself. And sometimes people get the wrong impressions of people, but I saw through him eventually, and we did a lot together. And I think he was the making of me, because I can remember the headline in Motorcycle News. I think Andrew McKinnon was writing for the Motorcycle News then, and the headline, big picture of me on the Marowak, and there is life after 30. And that year, we had quite a few wins together and lap records, and it was the making of us both, really, because I wanted to beat him because of how I found him, and he wanted to beat me to prove a point, and we both ended up getting a factory ride. Graham Crosby was leaving Suzuki at the end of '81 to go to, I think he was on the Yamaha, Marlboro Yamaha, or going to GPs, and then Honda contacted Wayne, and Wayne got a ride with Honda with Ron Haslam and Joey Dunlop, and sorry, I'll have to go back a little bit. In end of '81, I went to the Swan Series with Wayne, and we both rode the Marowakis out, and Wayne won the series, and I came third at 3 different tracks. And I was in touch with Suzuki, trying to get a ride there, but they already had Mick Grant and the late John Newbold, so it was touch and go. Anyway, I flew back from Australia, and they asked me to go to the show at Alexandra Palace, and they gave me a jacket and signed me up for, I think I got my first ever wage packet or agreement on a deal, and they gave me $15,000 for the year as third rider. So, and I was going to ride Graham Crosby's last year's bike. So that was a massive breakthrough for me and a massive breakthrough for Wayne.
Was that the XR69?
The XR69, yeah.
The Texaco Heron Suzuki?
Yes, that's correct. That was the last year, those colours, the Barry Sheen colours, as everybody remembers. And it was like, it was almost like a fairy tale. Like you could have had a movie. It was unreal. I mean, third rider, Wayne going to Honda, and then me. Eventually that year in 1982, you know, I think we're about 4 or 5 meetings into the series in England, and the headlines they put me up and called me Winner Week Marshal. I was actually taking it to Ron and Wayne and Mick and Noddy, and you know, it was unbelievable. I think I'll just go back a little bit. I think after sometimes riders who were gifted rides, and the ride like my last year's protege for 2 years, coaching Ryan, I'm not saying he's like that, but some riders I've worked with, in the Blue Crew especially, they're riding from 5 years old.
Yeah.
The dads have got big motorhomes. They don't know anything but to go and ride a motorbike. They've never had to buy anything or pay for anything. And I think that was the making of me at 30 years old, to go and have that belief and train that hard, and to make it happen on established stars like John Newbold, who had been GPs with Barry and Granty, world champion, Haslam, world champion, Formula 1 champion. And for me to take it to them, I'm not saying it was easy, but I was loving it. I couldn't wait to get to a meeting. I would train 8 hours a day, and all I'd think about is my next win or beating Barry Sheen or whatever. And it was just an amazing year. And to top it at the end of the year was to lift that Man of the Year trophy by MCN. And then it was a massive thing to be voted
Absolutely,
Man of the Year.
yes.
I mean, I was up against Kenny Roberts and Sheeny and everybody, and to be in that green room in London, and be on stage, and everybody had paid to go to that night at night with the stars, as they called it then. And then I think we had David Essex presenting the trophies, and a DJ who was comparing the show, Dave Lee Travis, that was it.
Brilliant.
And then to be in that green room with all them stars, and you didn't know who had won it. It was a good kept secret. And as they kept calling him out on stage and you were getting nearer and nearer the top, I was thinking, like now it's sending shivers through me. So, and then when like they announced second place, and then I went up and won that trophy, it was just nuts, you know. It was just pinnacle, really. You know, the only thing that spoiled that year, well, spoiled it, ruined it. It was losing my teammate John Newbold. It's one of those, apart from Steve Machin, that was probably the saddest, one of the saddest times of my life. It was like, we know how cruel the sport can be. And then we had to ride then on the roads, because it was a World Formula One Championship. And if you were going to ride in England and be on a factory bike, we all had to win British title, and we had to try and win the World Formula One, which was important to the Japanese. So, you know, that's why I did the roads, for that reason. And probably the best race I've ever been in my life at the Northwest. I think there was me, Mick Grant, John Newbold, Ron Aslam, and Graham Wood on 750 Yamaha. And we were all on factory bikes apart from Graham Wood. And every lap we were going down the straights, and we're 4 and 5 abreast. It was probably nuts, but it was an amazing race, and 100,000 spectators. And coming up to start the last lap, the last corner before the start, the second to last corner before the start and finish, it was 140 mile an hour right-hander. Came down a gear, and we all followed each other in. And I think Ron was leading, and the pace slowed a little bit. And all I can remember seeing was Mick, was Noddy. All he did was, I think his front tyre touched Mick's swinging arm, because we're that close.
Yeah.
And it was almost like you'd just pick me up here and I want on that camera. I don't know, to this day, it's on that corner, Juniper Hill, which claimed the life of Tom Herron in 1979.
Did.
So this is 1982. So it was just, I didn't know where John had gone, and it was, but I knew, obviously, that it crashed. And as I started the last lap, and it was just all in my head. And I remember me and Ron, we dead heated actually over the line. And I didn't go to the rostrum. I refused. I went straight to see John's wife. I knew she was there with Michael, the little boy. Of course, your news had already broke. So we sat up all night with Alison, and John's dad came over. And, you know, them things are sad. And, you know, I've been through it with a lot of riders. And, you know, when the late Steve Machin was killed, he was my mentor. And then I bet that took me a year to get over it. It was just, and then, because I'd got the Suzuki ride, it sounds terrible, but I had to take that opportunity for myself of how hard I've worked.
Of course.
To keep winning races after the Northwest. So I kept doing that, and that's what made me really that year for everybody to want me for the next year.
The lovely thing is we still see Mike in the paddock now.
Yeah.
He's a big supporter of Kyle and Noddy's son, Michael. Lovely fella.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that he's still interested in racing, and he was only a nipper at the time, but...
Yeah, he brings me pictures of me and his dad, and most meetings at OMG Garage, and get on really well with him. And it's nice that he still supports Kyle. And I saw him when we surprised Kyle here at Jacksdale. He had a little private party, and we knew about it, and we got an hotel, me and Emma, and we got a taxi down to Jacksdale, and we surprised him that night. And Michael was there, and lots of others, and Kyle really appreciated us turning up, surprise package.
We'll come on to that, and we'll talk about Ryan and OMG later on. There's a whole story there.
Yeah.
But that year of 1982 was almost everything you touched turned to gold almost, didn't it? With the successes that you had on the XR69 against Ron and Noddy, bless him, and Joey was knocking around at the time, and it was a really popular time for motorcycle racing in the UK.
Yeah,
Barry was at his peak, and the sport then was not quite as big as football, but it'd make the front pages and the back pages. We were rock stars at the time, let's be fair.
Yeah, we were, yeah. And the support we had was as nuts. And of course, like, I'll tell you a story about on the roads. We went, it's a bit of a long story, but it's quite funny. So in 82, as I said, I was really fit and still enjoyed a few beers. So it was the Ulster Grand Prix 1982. Anyway, we travelled up to Stranraer to get the boat. Where does it go to? Larne. So the night before, Rex White was going out with Dot, the team manager, and they were in love. And me, Nick Goodison, and Nigel Everett, we were rum lads. Nick was my mechanic, Nigel was Granty's mechanic, and anyway, we went out in Stranraer and come back, and sounds terrible, but we used to get up to all sorts. So we actually we peed in the petrol tank of Rex's car, all three of us, and so anyway, we gets on the boat the next day, and I'm traveling on the bus with them for the crack. So anyway, of course, we got on the boat, and then on the boat, of course, we had a few more Guinnesses. Of course, the bus is going through Belfast up to the Ulster Grand Prix. We're busting for a pee. There's only the sink on the bus. So Rex is following in his car. I hope I don't offend anybody. So we had to have a wee in the sink. So, of course, it's running out, and Rex is following the bus, and Mick, an Australian guy who was a mechanic and crew chief, he's driving the bus. And so Rex comes on the headset, because they've got radio communication. He said, I think you ought to pull over, Mick. The bus has got a problem. He says there's a leak, and Mick says it hasn't got a problem. It's these dirty bees peeing in the sink. So Rex goes, I'll deal with them when we get to the hotel. So we drive up near the Ulster to this lovely hotel. I've never been there before. It's more or less a house.
Yeah.
None of us had stayed there before. It was run by an ex-policeman and his wife. So instead, my mate Ken Dundee used to leave me a car to use, and he'd left it in the car park. He knew where I was staying with the keys in it. So this is on the Tuesday or something, and we're setting up on the Wednesday, then practicing on the Thursday. So we get up to the hotel, and for some reason, me, Nigel, and Nick decided we were going to drive 90 mile to the northwest to where I stayed at the Sea Splash. So we gets off the bus. We don't take a case off, check in. Rex wants to see us and give us a bollocking. And we get in this car and we drive out the car park, me driving, few beers in me. And they all look as we go past, boom. We're down at the northwest on the Antrim coast. Dave and Shirley there as we walked in the afternoon at the Sea Splash. How are you doing, boys? All right, have a Guinness? Yeah. Anyway, we get the jukebox on. And the next thing is, it's 2:00 in the morning. So Dave and Shirley says, oh, you better have a room. So We have a room. We don't even get up till 10. Then we have some breakfast. Of course, then we drive up to the northwest. Of course, the Suzuki bus is parked, the awning's up, the benches are there, the bikes are on the stand. Nobody's speaking to us. Nobody. All Rex says, tonight, hotel meeting. Yes, Rex. So me, Nigel, and Nick get in the car when we've all finished with the bikes and packed away, ready for next day's practice. Of course, the first pub we pass going to the hotel, shall we have a quick pint? Yes. So we goes in the pub. Next thing is 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
There's a shock. So we goes back to the hotel. Luckily the the house, a massive house. Luckily the door's open. So we goes in the door. We're hungry. So we find this big kitchen. We don't know what room we're in and nothing. So where we're going to sleep. So there's this massive fridge. So we've got bread and cheese out and we're all making sandwiches. Then I hear somebody coming down the stairs and I think, oh, heck, we're in the shit. So this fridge was big enough for me to squat down and get in the bottom and shut the door. And then I heard this ex-copper come and he's giving them a right bollocking. Of course, we've never met this bloke. Anyway, he opens the fridge and there's me like this. And he goes, I'm surprised at you. And I didn't know who it was. So cut a long story short, we eventually got to bed. And the next day, I said to Nick, we've got to do something at this meeting. So we still hadn't had a bollocking off Rex. So on the race day, on the Saturday, it was me, Joey and Ron. So Joey and Ron on the Hondas, me on the Suzuki. And we were passing each other. There was the fans were going mad. And then Nick Goodison was on my pit board, my main mechanic and Junior Collins. And the pit board kept coming further and further out the scaffolding as you come through the Oulton. You've seen start and finish. So we dropped Ron off by about a second and a half. And then it was me and Joey. And on the last lap, I came through behind Joey and down the flying kilo. And I'm not joking, Nick Goodison was in the middle of the track like that. And I went down the flying kilo, I think, I've got to win this for the boys, I've got to do it. And me and Joey were at our top of our game. And then we went up the back, up towards Wheelers, and I dived past Joey and round the hairpin and up through Quarry. And I knew how good Joey was at Quarry. And I just held on, and I just 119.91 on the last lap with I think we had 130 odd horsepower. And that, I would have loved to have done the first 120, but we were close on the lap time. And of course, then everything was forgotten. We won the race and beat the Hondas. That's just one of our mad stories, you know. I hope nobody's offended by that.
Nobody will be offended by that.
We were just having, you know, we were having fun and taking racing serious, and we knew we were getting paid, and we knew we were at a world championship level. But boy, what a race that was! And people won't realise because they have never raced on the roads, and people ranging out the edges and the programmes waving. And the Irish always used to say to me, "You'll never beat Joey Marshall, and if he breaks down or anybody else wins, we hope you do." So I had a bit of respect over it.
They want Joey to win first, but if Joey can't, then if you're number two.
Yeah, and it was nice. I mean, I worried about riding on the roads, but I don't know for what reason, I just took to the Ulster Grand Prix from the first time I ever went. And I waited all day to go out in the last race, the 1,000 race, and put my 750 on the rostrum with Percy Tate and Tom Heron. And nobody expected that. It was just a track I really liked and I didn't mind pushing. I never liked the Northwest.
Why not?
I just
You keep talking. I'm going to cancel the lunch. We might as well just carry on. haven't we?
yeah, I just found it boring. I think if you had a fast bike at the Northwest, the straights, you could be there if you want the best rider, and that sounds awful. You know, it was just one of them tracks, and I think it was. It's hard to say what I really think about it. It was just, I love the atmosphere there and the seaside and the fans, but I think the track was just not for me, and I broke down a lot while I was leading, and I had a lot of bad luck there, and it was weird because I won. It took me 11 times to win there, and I was number 11, and it was the 11th day.
Oh, really?
That meeting, so it's quite spooky that.
Yeah.
But I can remember going down the sea splash and
Celebrating.
there must have been half a mile queue waiting to get in our hotel. Of course, not many of them got in, and people were celebrating in the bar, and I must have had 50 pints of Guinness in behind the bar that people had paid for, and you know, the landlord we won the cup, and it was, yeah, lovely atmosphere and lovely memories.
I think I never had the privilege of getting to the Ulster. Because for whatever we've been able to go racing and go to the Northwest and the TT. Obviously, the Ulster had stopped very sadly, so I've never had the privilege. But I so enjoy the Northwest 200.
Yeah,
it's the one event of the year we really look forward to because the atmosphere is still there.
Oh yeah,
the circuit, the course is different.
Yeah,
to when you rode it. I mean, the one that I always kind of take a little bit of a breath at is Mathers Cross, because where they've put the chicane in now, when it was flat out, you were literally staring at the gable end of the white cottage.
Yeah,
as you plow through it.
Yeah,
and it just you get a sense of how it used to be.
Yeah,
I understand why the chicanes are there now, and it's not to everybody's taste, but you know.
Yeah.
220, 230 brake horsepower super bikes around there.
Yeah, funnily enough, I always liked Mathers Cross. It was one of them corners. I pretty much enjoyed stuff like that in a weird way. And I get what Guy Martin says, that when he raced there and then put chicanes in, and then to him it want road racing, and that's one thing I like about the Ulster. It never changed. You just kept the flowing corners, the Deer's Leap, top of the door, all sorts of corners that were like that. If you got it right, the sensation was amazing. But yeah, Billy and Mervin's still involved, and Billy obviously went into the travel business, but they made us very welcome and accommodated us every year and looked after us. And yeah, there was no problems in that department. And like you said, the atmosphere and yeah, some of the races I had there were just nuts. They were amazing races. And I remember the first year I ever went, the late Steve Machin took me, my mentor. So that'd be 1974. And my mum and dad said, God, you're not going there, because there's still a lot of trouble then. And of course, young man like me, and went in Steve Machin's van, and we were involved with Mal Carter then, who sponsored Phil Haslam, and he went on to sponsor Ron Haslam and the Pharaoh, which is well documented, and probably one of the nicest, roughest men I've ever met, Mal Carter. He was a rough diamond from Halifax car dealer. So basically, I thought, yeah, we'll be all right, because they're running this event, so it can't be that bad. Flipping heck. Before we'd got off the boat, we had 3 guns resting as the window come down, where you go in and what you got in the van. And I'm sat there thinking, what have we come to? course, we got out of Belfast because we was docked in Belfast, Liverpool to Belfast then. So anyway, as we drove down to the Antrim coast, we didn't see so many soldiers, and to be fair, we never had any trouble. So it was just a really weird time. And the year in 1974 was probably the worst year of my racing career, because at the Northwest, I took my own 350. Phil crashed at Matters Cross, who just mentioned. And then Mal Carter, I didn't have a 250. He arranged for me to go on Phil's 250 in the 250 race. And it started to misfire down University Straight, so I stopped. And then we went from the Northwest to Scarborough. And then Phil lost his life at Scarborough. So Steve Machin was involved in that accident, Memento. And then about 2 weeks later, Steve had an accident at Cadwell Park on a test day down the back straight. Bike that he had in his showroom that he jumped on to try, that Tony Dawson from Schizo said it wasn't running right. And Steve jumped on it on this Bull Taco, and it seized up down the back straight, and he ended up in the dip, but he just flipped him awkward. And I came home from work from an electrical Harry car job at night time, at tea time. My mum said, "You've had a call from the garage." So I rang the garage and they said, "Oh, Steve's had an accident. He's in Louth Hospital." So I'd never seen anybody like that in hospital before, all wired up and in a coma. And Steve lost his life. This was Thursday. Steve passed away on the Sunday. And the garage carried on. June, his widow, and they just had a little girl. And Don Briggs, Steve's mechanic, said he'd carry on, and Dave Saunders. And they said I inherited all Steve's bikes basically, but I had a very poor year that year. I just didn't have the fight I had in me to do well. So, losing Phil and then Steve. And Phil was a big involvement because Mal Carter came to the garage all the time. Steve and Don did a lot of work for them on bikes. So strange time in my life that was.
What was in like this day and age? We have things in place, don't we, that people can help when the most unfortunate of circumstances happen. We've got so many things in place these days. But when you go back to the mid-late 70s, and then with Noddy in 82,
Yeah.
it was literally shoulders back, chin up, get on with it.
Yeah, 70s. There'd probably be, I think one of the year in the 70s, it probably 74. There's probably 6 riders I knew who were good, who passed at the TT. And, Steve's funeral, Phil's funeral, Steve's funeral, and then a bit later on, all these people who passed on roads, and like Mick Patrick at Cadwell. You probably don't know who Mick Patrick was, but his big friends were Steve Parrish, Harold Kopic, the chicken farmer, who was a big sponsor then. He crashed coming out of Cadwell, out of Charlie's at Cadwell on the first lap, high-sided, and he got hit, and then he passed away. And I was going to all these funerals, and like Dave Potter, my old sparring partner on the 750 Yamaha, and like that period, I said to myself then, I've got to stop going to funerals because it's not being disrespectful, it's affecting me. And it was a funny era because obviously roads have got safer.
Yes.
Obviously the tracks, like we used to hit tyres. Have you seen the old pictures that were Mallory S's or Knickerbrook at the end of Back Straight, where you never had his or chicanes are out? I've crashed there and come round in the medical centre and thought I didn't even know what track I was on for 2 weeks later, and things like that. And, you know, the knocks on the head, and, you know, now they've moved barriers back, they've made things better. I mean, the safety now has been amazing. The doctors, the staff, you know, to be fair to Stuart Higgs, he gets a lot of slack sometimes, a lot of people, but I've worked in race control for 11 years, and Stuart is all safety and tries to do the best for the sport, and he has a lot of pressure on him. And in 11 years in race control, I saw a lot what goes on. So, you know, things have got so much better.
I agree completely. The circuits are so much safer. As you say, the medical standards,
Yeah.
the medics they have on site. There's so much that we can do now at a race circuit.
Yeah.
Before they get transferred to hospital.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest things of motorcycle racing in the last 20 years is
Yeah.
how the safety side's improved at all levels. But Stuart, particularly for what he's done for BSB.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, he has, and the Bales, and a lot of people don't know Norman Williamson, who's a safety officer, and he has to sign the form to say the track's safe. And
Yeah.
you know, you put all these type A, type B, type C, and all these different type of bales for different corners, and you've got more and more over the years, and then, you know, you have somebody have the strangest accident and there's nothing there, so you keep adding, and, you know, and it evolves all the time. So, and Norman does a great job with Stuart. Take my hat off to him, and he was a good bloke to work with, Norm, on the Judas Hill panel.
So we'll talk about that as well, because that's a fascinating side that we don't. We'll come back to the early 80s. I've got notes.
Yeah, we're going on a bit, aren't we?
Hey, no, there's nothing. This is the idea, Reg. This is all about you. This is your show. But while we mention that, we'll just hop backwards and forwards, because the listeners and the viewers, they just enjoy the stories, and they'll be enjoying having you on the show. And again, thank you, mate.
No worries.
It's a true privilege to sit with you up here. Tell us about the time in race control, because that's one side of the sport we don't get to know too much about, of what goes on behind the scenes, whether it's a judicial panel, how you decide what moves, or whether that was when Rubin's racing, or whether it's deliberate, and what has to be meted out. Yeah. You spent a lot of time up there over the years.
Yeah, I'm just trying to piece together. I went from running Red Bull Ducati for 5 years. So much has happened when I think about it in my life. I'm supposed to write another book this winter, but you didn't contact me, and you know who you are. So anyway, I came out of there, and then, like, there's loads of stuff to talk about. And the next time I was contacted to do something in racing, I was actually back in Waltham, my old village, and I was living with my sister, and I got a little flat, and then I teamed up with one of my old mates. I did a bit of roofing for a while, and then a bit of fencing, and then I went back to my electrical with a guy I went to college with. And I was on believe it or not, I was on a boat in Grimsby Dock, wiring this boat. They were going to use it for accommodation for themselves. And it had come up from the Thames, it had been brought up. And they'd got two, and we were on the first one. And it was a really interesting project. And I was on the roof of this boat in winter, and I was contacted by Stuart. And there was a guy leaving, I forgot his name. He was there years as doing what I did, like riders rep and all that. So anyway, I met Stuart, we agreed a deal. And that's when I started. And Dave Francis was clerk of the course then. So it was Dave I started to work with, and my role there was like there'd be 4 people on a judicial panel. So each one, there'd be clerk of the course, probably safety officer, me and someone else, or Stuart. So, and if Stuart was close to people or whatever, he couldn't be biased, so there'd probably be 3 of us or whatever. And also I had the role, I used to try and walk around the paddock, talk to people, see what problems they have or where they could see something going, and if Stuart was too busy, I would mention it, and like that type of thing, you know. So, and also Stuart did let me still help people as well. So, like help with Josh Brooks in 2025 when he won the 2015 when he won the British Championship. So as part of Josh's there, because of obviously my wife Emma, we'll come on to that later, and like, so that was my role, and Stuart letting me have a little bit of time and track walk and do a bit of spotting. So, and then on the race days, my job was to watch monitors, and then, like you rightly said, how do you judge if somebody's done this, that, and the other? So people go up in arms when they watch the television and say it was clear that he did this, but we have circuit cameras, we have cameras on the bike, we have so much technology to look, and people outside of the sport say we make a wrong decision sometime, but it's what we have technology-wise to make our decisions happy. So I go in there as an ex-rider who's experienced being knocked off and knocked other people off, and not many times, but been in all these situations, if you like. So often I can have a very strong influence on it, and Stuart wants me to.
Yeah.
Or if it's a technical thing, then, you know, we have to rely on the technical side from the scrutineering bay with Colin and the clerk of the course and blah, blah, blah. So more or less I had the bigger influence on what happened on the track. So, and obviously we weren't always very popular. I remember my first time at Brands, I think it was Tommy Bridewell. Sorry, Tommy. And we had Tommy in for something. We hadn't had a judicial. We just had him in the office. And of course, I sat there with Dave Francis trying to learn everything. Anyway, a lot of shouting. And then all of a sudden, Tommy went out, slammed the door. I think one hinge come off the door. And I just looked up and Dave went, "You get used to it." And I'm driving home through the tunnel that night with Emma, and I said, "I don't think this judicial thing's for me, you know." I said, "I can't be doing with all that." Anyway, Dave said, "Stick with it." He said, "It's important to have you here." And over the years, I've always given an honest opinion, and sometimes the riders have gone and it hasn't been very nice. But, you know, I don't have any problems with any of the riders that were involved that we gave penalties to anymore. And I think when, like Dave Francis used to say, once they've been home for a week, they'll probably come and say sorry because they'll have analysed it better. And 9 times out of 10, that did happen. So I felt it was very important in the 11 years for me to stick it out and make sure I was there for the right reasons. And sometimes, like I say, it wasn't always popular, but, you know, we made it happen.
Can you remember the biggest decision you had to make?
Yeah. Can you remember the shaky incident at Assen with Alex?
With Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was massive. And we came out at 10 o'clock at night, And I can remember that there was only Emma there, sat on a barrier, freezing cold at 10 o'clock at night, and there wasn't a thing in the paddock. And when we went up for that meeting at tea time, there were people still packing up. And that was a massive decision to make. I mean, we've had other ones where they've dragged on late and, you know, and I understand, like, top teams, I'm not going to name anybody.
No, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. Just things we can talk about.
And top managers, when they know their rider's done wrong, but they still defend them to the hilt, I get that, because they're getting penalty points or they're getting put to the back of the grid and you're dicing for a British Championship and you are a factory team. I get that, but sometimes you have to stand up and be counted and take it. So, yeah, we've had some big issues, but that's what we're there for. If we didn't do that, it'd be like my day. After the race, you go in the barn, you put your fists up and knock somebody out, and that's how we used to sort the job out. And I'm not joking.
Give me an example, Reg.
Oh, no, I cannot. No, it's not, we're normally all right. I mean, it's funny, as I didn't know the Aslams when I club raced.
Yeah.
And when I mean, we are diverse in a bit here, but who cares? As long as the people enjoy it. When I first got my 350 after my sidecar, my first meeting obviously was Cadwell. And this bloke from Grimsby, Colin Ray, who worked for probably the best rider Lincolnshire's ever seen. I mean, people say about who's the best rider come out of ever Lincolnshire, and there'll be Chatterton and Machin and Guy Martin and blah, blah, blah. And Freddie Frith, it was the best rider out of Lincolnshire, I can tell you now, because he was a world champion, won the TT and won the British Championship. So story closed, and he had a shop in Grimsby. So, yeah, so I bought a bike, a 350, of a guy who had been on single cylinders, Manx, Nortons and all that, and he couldn't get on with it. So I bought that bike, Thames van, went to Cadwell, and he said, that's the gearing for Cadwell. Thought, yeah, I'm going to be the man. Flipping heck. Finished 16th in the 350 race in a club meeting. I just could not get over it. So went home that night to my mum and dad's council house in Waltham, put the bike in the garage, and I thought, I don't know what's gone on here. Anyway, I had to catch a lorry the next day, a timber lorry that was going to Glasgow. I was working in Glasgow. And the company I worked for, they stayed up there 3 weeks at a time. So back up to Glasgow, back on the scaffolding at 8 o'clock. I've told these stories to some of the Blue Crew lads I used to school, and they don't believe me. So, yeah, put another 10-hour shift in to pay for your racing. Anyway, next weekend, they were still up there, so put me on the motor at Bells Hill in Glasgow, top of the M6, M54, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then thunder lift back to Waltham. You can imagine what that was like. Like M6, A66, A1, all the way into Grimsby. So it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the morning. Get to the garage, load me bike up, leathers, helmet, out my dad's garage, go pick me mate up. We drove to Snetterton. On the way to Snetterton, I'm driving this van. I'm saying, I'll tell you what I'm not going to do at Snetterton, because it's fast there. Obviously, you know. I said, I'm not going to change the gear until I can ride this bike, because I couldn't pull top gear at Cadwell. I was crap at Charlie's Bend, I must have been. So we go there. In the 350 race, there was a lad called Roger Keane and Dave Oban, who were the boys in club racing at the time, especially at Snetterton. And I finished second, I gave him a run the whole race. I said to me, mate, this is how green I am. I'm no mechanic. So I said to me, mate, I'm going to change the front sprocket on this bike for Cadwell. So we put a 14-inch sprocket on, 1436. I can still remember the gearing. And went to Cadwell the next day. Of course, Terry Haslam was the man then on a Commando. Terry was winning everything before he went sidecar racing. So I went out, practice, and then in the 350 race, I won it and broke the lap record. Like, I think I did a 1:10.6, I think it was. Chris Mayo will remember. And in the big race, Terry was leading and I was chasing him. Then on the last lap, we went round Charlie's and Terry got on the grass a bit. And I went through and I won the race. And then there used to be near Scrutineering Bay, where you went out to Old Benza, there used to be a little wooden hut where you got your trophy. And I remember it was 10 quid to win that race. And that was a lot of money in 74. I got my two trophies and tenner. And I walked out and there was the row of Haslams and Alan Paces and all who lived in Langley Mill. And I know Ron was in there. And I said to Ron, what was all that about years later? And he says, lad, he says, our Terry was going to win that, and that was the fuel we had to get home in the van. That was just one of the funny stories of club racing, but that was the start of me getting good in club racing.
Well, that opened then the door, didn't it? Moving forward through the teams that you did and the successes that you had.
Yeah.
We sat down with Ron in May last year, and there's the great thing that I find about sitting and chatting with you is you speak to so many people in the sport over the year, and you mention Reg and they all go, yeah. It's such held in such high regard in the sport for what you've done, not only in race control, but the riders that you developed over the years, the successes that you had, and the races that you were part of, and the history that you were part of. But then as you get to later and you talk to Simo and you talk to Ben Atkins, and when you said about Nick Goodison being in the track at the Ulster, you did the same thing for Simo, didn't you?
Yeah, I watched the podcast. Thanks, Simo. No, Simo, I absolutely love Simo and I loved his dad, and I was gutted when he crashed that bike, and then he got over it, and then obviously we know what happened last year. Like, he passed away. So
bless him.
Bill was one of my favourites, and then obviously Simo came to me and Spanner, Chris Anderson. He came to us at Reve Red Bull Ducati, and he got on the production bike, and so we won the production series with him, and then was at the TT. I was helping him at the TT. He wasn't on the Reve bike.
No.
So, and then I was at where was I? Ballacrane, wasn't I? Yeah, so I got my board, and it was a lovely sunny day, and he must have I was boarding. I had a couple of cans and my shirt off, and every time Simo come through, I was giving him that, and I know that helps riders because it helped me, and a lot of it is all head thing, and you obviously got to have the ability, but a lot of it, what I've done with riders over the year, I've made them think differently, and anyway, that's another story. But when Simo led and come through on the last lap, well, he said on your podcast, he says I was right in the middle of the track with a board giving it that and a tin in the other hand, and that's lovely what Simo said about me, and respect, and that's what I felt I could always install in a rider, and that was my strength right from meeting Robin Appleyard when I was on the Skull Bandit in Daytona. That's right, yeah. And his mum and dad, Colin and Peggy, were there, and He ended up, they introduced me to Robin, and then they never saw him again. He was when I was going to the track at 7 a.m, he was waiting for me, and his mum and dad never saw him again. And our life revolved around that paddock and having a chocolate milkshake on the way home back to the digs in Daytona. So, yeah, we become friends, and Peggy and Colin, and obviously right from Robin on his first 125, I started schooling him, and we had great respect for each other, and that's where I started to try and help people after that once, because they only had another year after the Skull Bandit year, so on the Cosy. So basically that was where all this started. And people say I learned a lot because Roger Burnett, his brother Ian Burnett, who we've touched on before, you know, they believed in me, and I needed that to take me to the top, you know. And once you've been at the top, you start to believe in yourself and you get the right headspace, but you can soon come out of that headspace. And, you know, I still think even a top rider, don't matter who you are, it's always nice to have somebody there sat by your side in a garage, or go to your motorhome when things aren't going right, do a track walk, clear the air, and get back on track. And that's a massive side of racing now.
Confidence is everything in racing.
Absolutely, yeah.
You see it once a switch gets flicked, and you've seen it. You've seen how Ryan's developed. We've seen it with Taron when things drop into place, with Kyle, even at Grand Prix level. All of a sudden, Pecco Bagnaia is a prime example. Casey in his first year struggled, but then the planets aligned, bang, confidence, away you go.
I met Pedrosa once, and I've never met anybody as serious as that in my life. And I don't know if he ever had anybody to try and help him, but that guy was wound up, and he's probably the fastest rider that ever walked the planet. You know, Pedrosa on his day could just go, and he still can now.
He proved that a couple of seasons back with a wild card at Lozano.
So, but his big problem, I don't think he could enjoy it.
That'll be an interesting question, because we were supposed to do it yesterday, but he's fortunately for him. Do you know Johnny Eyre?
Johnny Hare?
Eyre, E-Y-R-E. He worked with Danny for 11 years at Repsol Honda. Call him Johnny Repsol.
Oh yeah, I know you mean, yeah.
So Johnny's supposed to be on the show.
He's
just signed
I know
a new job for this year. So we've had to rearrange a little bit. But that'll be an interesting question for Johnny, because he had 11 years with him.
Yeah, good point. He'd probably say I'm talking bollocks, but there you go.
But he was serious.
Well, that is my opinion.
But you see that in this again. This is the beauty of this conversation. It's just chat. We can go here, there, and everywhere with it.
We could spend a week here. I mean, I've had riders like Sean Emmett and John
Reynolds.
John Reynolds in the same garage, and that is
the opposite ends of the spectrum.
If anybody's listening, hi Sean, that is your biggest nightmare. You know, I mean, as a team manager, to manage them two side by side, John wasn't a problem, but he was always at me, get him out of my hair, Roger. I don't want to talk to you. He's doing me head in. And like Sean could turn up, chuck his leg over a bike, and 2 laps, he could equal a lap record. That's how talented he was. And that talent like that, he wasted.
It's generational, isn't it?
He could have been the best, one of the best ever. Where John Reynolds was totally the opposite. John was a grafter. John worked hard. And if people like Sean Emmett, I don't think they ever realised what they had. And I mean, Michael Rutter won't thank me for saying this, but he's the same in a different way. Michael the ability and natural stuff that Michael had was out of this world. But to get him out of bed in the morning, and if you mentioned a gymnasium to him, he'd have to have a double whiskey to get over it. He didn't know what one of them was, you know. And I've worked with Michael, so I know what he's like. Him and Stringer, I took them on at Med Racing. I took them down the sand dunes at Cleethorpes. I was looking where they were. I was only warming up for a run, and they were both flagging. Press-ups and sit-ups, never heard of them. So anyway, loads of stories.
But we spoke to Michael just before Christmas. He's got a job on this year with his new team, and with Storm stepping onto the XFHO BMW
combination.
That's going to be an interesting one. But there's another man that was so complimentary of you from what you'd done to help him, and with himself and Ray Stringer at Met, which was your first.
That was my first
team job, wasn't it?
I was team coordinator. Yeah, Nick Goodison joined me. And Kevin Stevenson, you know Kevin.
I know Kev Stevenson. Yeah.
Yeah, his son Jake races.
He does.
Yeah, well, I worked obviously a lot of years. My wife worked with Kevin for 10 years with Rob Matt.
Rob Matt Racing, yeah.
So Kevin, I gave him his first job.
Incredible.
Yeah, Nick Goodison and Kevin Stevenson were full time at Med Racing. We had the Kawasaki, and then we took the RC45 on, which was the biggest mistake and advice I ever gave anybody.
Why?
Because of that bike. That was the worst bike when it come out that I've ever.
Simo wasn't complimentary, but not in customer form, in factory form.
Yeah.
Apparently it was incredible. Your Kaczynskis and your Simon Crafars and your world level bikes were incredible, but the customer bikes were.
I mean, Stuart Med was a builder building Wickes' stores, and he had a furniture business out near York. And he brought me in, and then I had Ray and Michael on the Kawasaki, and then said, what about next year? And it's the worst advice I've ever given anybody, because having rode for Honda, each year when a new bike come out, and I experienced it in World Formula One, Joey would always get the new bike and I'd have his last year's bike. So, and the new bike, they always seem to be better. So as this RC45 was coming out, of course, Aaron Slight and Colin at Louth was having one. And we did a deal with Honda to get a couple for us. But boy, they were horrendous. I think we had 25 frames at one time being re-welded at Spondon. We just couldn't. The only win we had was with James Hayden at Snetterton in the wet.
In the wet, yeah. Never won a dry race, did it?
It just wouldn't do anything.
No.
I went overnight once to near Magna Kerr in a van, got the ferry, went on the Friday to get an engine mapped at Magna Kerr by a specialist technical guy. And I drove back, I got home Sunday, and this was going to be the bee's knees, this engine, because it was hard to get the engine to work properly as well, never mind the handling. So it was just a nightmare year. I mean, our first test was Mallory with James and Stringer. And in the Arctic, we didn't pack it. We just threw the bits in. Both bikes came back. Both riders crashed, both riders. They used to snap, completely snap, where the frame comes up to the edge still. Used to snap the whole front end out, every crash. And then we were buying new frames. And eventually I did a deal with Spondon Engineering, and they plated them up. It made a jig, and thanks to them, saved Stuart Med and his brothers a lot of money. But sorry, we say that's the only race it won in a dry. Robert Dunlop won did the double at the Northwest.
He did the double at the Northwest, on the short circuit.
Short circuit.
Yeah, it was just one wet win.
And then Robert did the double, and then obviously TT was another story. with the RC45 for Robert. So, yeah.
The rear wheel.
Yeah, we bought Marowak wheels, which are specially from the road. Instead of running old wheels or anything, we ordered all these new wheels. We had them in the bikes. And of course, every practice, the wheels were washed and polished and looked at, and they were all running perfect. And then in the race, Robert was running well, and then he disappeared, and we'd heard he'd jumped the laugh, and the next corner he'd crashed. Of course, we didn't know why he'd crashed, so Michael come in, did his pit stop, finished the race. Flipping heck, Michael, if he'd have had to go down Braille another lap, he'd have been upside down in a wall. The wheel was that bad, and Robert's wheel collapsed, and I stayed on in the Isle of Man. Saw Robert through the first bit of his surgery and stuff, and then came back to England. But how the hell Robert got over that, I'll never know. That just shows what the Dunlops were like to me, the determination and write somebody off like them you would never do, and to come back and do what he did with his arm as it was on his 125, and so yeah, so I'm pleased he fought for his cash, and I was a big part of that, and he eventually got a big payout. And I think it probably Clive Oulton quite hard, because I think he imported the wheels at the time, if my memory's right. So it wasn't very nice for him, but it was true. It was, the wheel went up to it.
It's one of those that you go back and through history, and you've been part of some great times and part of some difficult times as well. And when you're team coordinator at that point, and
Yeah,
the kind of the buck stops with you before it gets to the owners,
yeah,
you're responsible for the good times and the not so
Yeah.
good times.
yeah, because
Everybody enjoys the good times.
yeah, you sit in your office, where I had at Med Racing, my office, and you're looking at what we're going to supply on the bike for next year. We're going on the road, so we want the best. Now they're making this wheel, and it's going to do the roads, and then that happens. Yeah, it's should never happen.
Never.
And that was always my biggest fear, riding at the TT. And I can honestly say, I've said it before, once we knew we were going to the TT, and I started training in middle of January, which I always used to, because you can overdo training. So
Very much you can.
And I never slept properly till the TT was over. Yet people like the Ulster, which was later in the year, I look forward to it. It was just, I was always worried about mechanical, a clip-on snapping, front brake lever, all these silly things.
Yeah, but they're
Oil
not at the TT.
And oil leaks were a big thing then, and I had quite a few in my time, and had some massive crashes. And if you ever see me go through a slow corner anywhere, TT or any road, you'll see me look down both sides, and I'm looking at my boots, because that's the first sign of oil you got, a sprinkling on your boots. And that's an habit I got into. It gave me a bit of confidence for the next few miles.
Yes, that it's going to be right.
Yeah.
One thing, when I was doing a bit of research and I was looking through, you end up going down a little rabbit hole on YouTube and watching a few things. And there was a documentary from the 82 TT, the great Brian Reed, Neil Robinson, yourself, Granty, Joey. There was a conversation, and I was paying quite close attention to it, weirdly. You might know, you might recall the conversation. Yeah, in 82. And it was practice, and your fairing had come loose.
Yeah, Granty's had happened.
Granted, it happened before, and then you were having a conversation about it.
Yeah, I was expected to do really well that year, and I was up for it. And I'd obviously been winning on the short circuits, and history shows that. And then it was a Shell film, I think, done by Shell. I forget what it's called now, but
It's on YouTube. I'll put a link to
it's
it in
an
the
absolutely
description.
brilliant film
is.
if anybody wants to watch it.
It covers quite
There's
a
a
lot
lap
of the
for
riders.
Granty, and then there's a piece about the rivalry between Honda and us at Suzuki. And
Yeah.
it's very, as Dave said, it's very interesting, and there's some funny bits and some like hectic bits in it. But yeah, so Granty had this fairing go, and he'd got back to the paddock. Unbeknownst to me, where was I? Oh yeah, that's right. I jumped the left bridge, and I was going down the straight towards Quarry Bends, and I was absolutely pinned under the screen. And then, like, you get little bends as they are at those speeds before you dive that last right, just going down into the first left of Quarry, which was a bit tighter then. So I'm coming up to there, flat out in top, and all of a sudden, it's like I'm moving towards to one of the hedges. So I don't know what's happening. And for some reason, I could see sort of bits of fiberglass, but I didn't know what was happening. And my bars were jammed. So I set up and I smashed the right-hand clip on into the fairing. And then I was jammed going to the left. And all the time I'd got the throttle shut off and I was trying to slow down. But when you're doing 190 mile an hour, everything's happening so quick. Anyway, I managed to miss the curb on the left by smashing the clip on again. And then it weaved me way through Quarry and then stopped. And the actual fairing, the two bobbins on the side and the one on the front, Japanese had made all these lightweight bits and stuff, and all the bobbins, it pulled through the bobbins and it jammed the fairing on the front wheel and the tyre and on the forks and the clip-on, and of course it locked the steering. And of course I managed to cruise over the mountain and get back to the paddock, and I think the commentator picks me up. I give the bike to the mechanic, and then I'm rubbing through my hair, and I think he says ashen-faced, and I was ashen-faced. And because you think that's it. And then I explain into Granty in
No uncertainty.
well, in not very nice words. And of course, I had two bikes, and my other bike had the normal fairing and bobbins on. So basically, I had to go out again and try and build my confidence. Because it was the last practice before the race. So, and then they go down to the hotel at night out there, and that's quite a funny bit.
It's a smash. I'll put the link to it in the description.
Yeah.
It's such a great one. When you did
Bray to Governors, it's called, I think.
that's the one. When you did the TT and you had such a great rivalry with Joey and Granty and everybody that raced it, what was your favourite part of the course? Which one did you enjoy most?
From Cronknavody Straight to Ramsey Hairpin.
Okay. Scratchy, but fast.
Yeah, loved it. Loved that bit. Hated from the start and finish to there. Isn't that weird? Yeah.
It is, because normally
Hated that bit.
the short circuit boys that are more short circuit orientated, Hickey, Davey, Steve Plater, the riders that have won British championships at short circuits, Ramsey to Cronkmona,
Yeah.
is always the land of the short circuit rider, isn't it? So to hear that, because Dean always seems to be quickest from Grandstand through Glen Helen to Ramsey, or before Michael upped his game. But to hear that's unusual.
Yeah, because Joey, that was my big downfall. From start and finish to the first checkpoint, Joey would always get 2 to 3 seconds on me. And then I was always chasing. So I just didn't like, because obviously didn't have tyre warmers,
No.
so it was always by feel. So some of them early sectors, like they were they were fast, you know, and till I felt comfortable. It was just like, it was weird, like Greba Castle and Greba Bridge and all them. I was good on the next lap, but I just didn't like that bit on the first lap, and that was a big downfall for me. And I think a lot of, I think a lot of riders have had to up the game on the first sector over the years. You know, if I'm not right, Steve Plater, the compare, who I worked with this weekend at Newark Show, I think Steve, it's one of them where you have to up your game a bit, because people like Steve are amazing over the mountain, and well, he become amazing all round when the year he won the TT. I was working for Honda that year. John won one, he won the other. So yeah, it was just, I did get there eventually and match it, you know. So the year I lost the championship to Joey, we went to where was the last round? I always forget where the last round was, but we went to the last round on equal points, and that was a short circuit. And of course, I was looking forward to that, because we'd finished first and second nearly in every race that year at Honda, and there was a lot of tracks then, like Assen and Sugo, and we went all over the place. So the last race, we went, and it was in Belgium, that's right. So I was confident, and Chris Mayo, the night before the race, Chris Mayo stripped my engine, only the topper, checked the valves. Of course, the Japanese brought some new head gaskets over. Well, they were just head gaskets, but they were a new breed of head gasket, and Chris put that on, and bike was honky-dory, and it was chucking it down with rain for the race. And then all of a sudden, temperature gauge just went up and off the radar on my bike, and I was like comfortably in the right position to be world champion. And I had to come in, and to cut a long story short, just went up in smoke because it had boiled, and the head gasket, they had a batch of faulty head gaskets. So how unlucky was I not to?
And what bike was that on?
It was a Honda. The thing is with me, I'm not very technical.
You and me both.
I don't go with all these models. I just turn up in the garage, and then one thing I've taught Ryan is to stop telling him what he wants. So I used to come in and say what I thought the bike was doing, because the crew chiefs and the suspension guys and the technical people now can look at the computer. They know what the bike's doing. You get a rapport, however you say it, rapport with a rider. They understand what he wants. Like Dave, who I worked with last year, Ryan's crew chief 2 year, amazing guy. They know what Ryan needs, and I know what Ryan needs in his head and when I'm watching him on the track, and if he's not going well. So, you know, that was one thing I had. I didn't take much notice. Of course, I remember the XR69 and the RS500 Honda, which were my two favourite all-time bikes, but, you know, for certain different reasons. So, yeah, it's just one of them that it was an Honda.
The only reason I asked, there are a couple of times now, there's been one of our viewers on YouTube, a couple of times, he's clearly very technical. And he did it with the Brent Gladwin chat a couple of weeks ago. And he ends up screaming at his telly, but what bike was he on? And I'm sat there and I'm like, even I don't know. I just
it was probably an RVF.
Yeah.
I mean,
something with a single-sided swing arm.
No, I don't think it
was. It not?
No. Twin swing.
It was a normal swing arm.
Yeah, as far as I remember. But there you go.
I know he was one of your biggest rivals, but how well did you get on with Joey?
Well, funnily enough, Joey and I got on quite well. We had our ups and downs, which is well documented from the Ulster, windy corner, as they all remember it. So it was an amazing race we were having that day, and the top of Bador, which was the last series, well, no, there was only one corner after Bador up towards Wheelers, and I think was it called Windy Corner or something like that. So, you know, there was one year when I led out of Bador, and I'd learnt a lot off Joey in this race, and I had both wheels drifting out of there and they off cambered, and I just clipped the grass, and I thought, sweet. And I went up to the next left-hander, and I was quick there because you had to be up to Bador, up to Wheelers, sorry. Yeah. And Joey come under me, and I thought it was a really rough move because I'd already committed, and I had to lift, and I hit the bank coming out. I had to change down. Of course, Joey was away up the hill. And you know what it's like as a racer. I don't think in my career I've ever spouted off before. But I think it was because on a road at them speeds, and I nearly ended myself, that there was only like half a mile to go, and I came in, and I was furious. And Barry Simmons was trying to calm me down, and you know that it was hectic. And of course, them days, all the public and Joey's fans, and you know, and it got really out of hand. And I can remember I don't know what happened, but next morning the brake lines had been cut on the Rothman's truck, and there was a lot. The tires were punctured, and it was a big deal. That yeah. So anyway, after that, I went up to Joey at the next meeting, and I said, "Look, that job's finished." Shook his hand and said, "Let's get on with it." And that's me, you know. Yeah. I don't bear grudges, so you know, I just got on with the job. But it was after that, there was a lot of times when I really understood Joey. I could understand him when he was speaking, whether he's mumbling, I understood him. And I've shared rooms with him at Portugal at Villarreal, where we had a bit of a night out there, and we shared a room and I can remember it was Mick Grant's birthday. Have you heard this story?
Go ahead.
So we had the day off the next day, but we're all in, because Villarreal was in a big, have you been?
No, I haven't.
It's in a big valley.
Okay.
There's no wind, no way of getting out the heat. You're in 100 degrees with no air or anything, and it's one of the hardest races in the world that you'd ever do. And it's on the most scariest track ever. 140 mile an hour, 50, walls, no bales, over railway track, over a bridge. Anyway, this particular night, we went out, celebrated with Mick and his birthday. Come out of this nightclub at 1 o'clock in the morning. Joey's got me and Chris Mayo, my crew chief, in this car. Let's do a lap. So we did a lap. Of course, we got back to the hotel, which was on the outskirts of the track somewhere, and it had a petrol station on the outside of where they serve petrol in the morning. So I can remember Chris Mayo being sick. Sorry about this, Chris. And he'd lost his false teeth, so I found him in the sick, because I had a lot of respect for Chris. I wouldn't do it for everybody. And gave him back, and he popped him in. So I can't remember anything about going in the hotel, but I can remember next morning Joey's in that bed there, and I'm in this, and the door, they nearly have taken the door off to get in. So I go to the door. This bloke, I couldn't understand what he was saying in Portuguese, and he's pointing at the window. So I open the curtains, and there's about 50 vehicles queued up to get fuel, and they can't get to the pumps because Joey's parked the car in the middle of the pumps, and there's one wheel hanging in the air, spinning in the wind, and the doors are all open, and there's a pile of sick at the side of it. So I said, yeah. So I pulled some pants on. Joey, where's the key? Where's the key? And I couldn't wake Joey up, and found the key downstairs. With a bit of help from these garage people, I managed to back it up. Anyway, there must have been £500 in the glove box. There must have been 600 cigarettes on the back seat. And so I locked it all up, parked it up, went back to bed. Of course, Joey never got up that day. Not at all, not till the next day, till we practiced. Of course, Barry Simmons said he came that day. Didn't like to tell him what had happened. I said, Joey's just resting. Anyway, he heard about it. Of course, I always got the blame, so I was in the shit again with Simmons. I was always the bad boy. But anyway, just another story.
It's another one.
Yeah, me and Joey had some laughs, yeah. And I totally respected that man like you wouldn't believe. And I learnt so much on the roads off him, because I could have rode round any second gear or first gear corner. I could have rode past Joey outside, inside, anywhere. But any fast corner, Joey worked hard to get it right, because the next straight, he knew he'd make a lot of time. And he was good. He was the boy, yeah.
I enjoy the stories about Joey and Robert and the Dunlop family, because it's not something I'll ever experience. And I know a lot of our listeners and viewers, that everybody loved Joey.
Yeah.
And talking to Mark Lloyd a couple of weeks ago, built his engines in 2000 for his last big bike win.
Yeah.
And again, the same as everybody holds him in such high regard.
Yeah.
For what he did and what he achieved. Then you see Michael going on now, his nephew, beating his record.
Yeah. I mean, in a funny sort of way, I didn't expect that, because no disrespect to Michael, and I'm sure he'll probably back me up, but when you see him on the short circuit, he's had his moments, but Joey, if Joey wanted to, and he could, and when we diced for a world title, and he's up against me, Grant, Fred Merkel, Roger Burnett, you name them, Virginio Ferrari, David Tardozzi, there was a right gang of us.
They're all doers.
Who were fast. And Joey on his day could take it and take a win. And I've never seen that in Michael.
No.
And that's no disrespect to Michael, because I think he's got it in him, but I think he uses it a practice, and that's my opinion.
No, he does. He's not out there to win.
And me and Michael get on great. We don't have a problem. I like Michael. So, and then when he comes to the roads, he can raise the game and he can take them on. If Michael's bike's right, you're in trouble. Yeah, and then he's got Toddy to think about now.
Absolutely. The tide is there, isn't it? I mean, Dean has got a big year coming up, because it didn't quite work for him last year, that first year in factory Honda. And Pete on the BMW, he's always going to be up there. Davey's got a proper confidence side to him now.
Yeah, now he's had the big win.
Now he's had the senior win. And hopefully Brooksy will be back.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Josh back there. I think he's when we spoke to him at Donington, is how much the time away kind of hurt him. And I often wonder what Josh could have done had he not had so many years away from it for different reasons.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people in my era and after who could have, no disrespect to Joey, but would have been have incredible tally of wins. And the first one I'll mention is Rob Mack. Rob Mack was special on the roads. I know he was on the short circuits.
Yeah.
But I think his weight held him back. You're right, Rob. In GPs. But on the roads, on big four strokes, he didn't have a problem. But even though he run at the sharp end at GPs, and then he lost a lot of weight, and I don't think he had the energy towards the end of a GP. That's just my opinion. But I think if Rob had stayed on the roads, then he would have had a massive tally, and the other one would be Islop.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when you think how many wins he racked up, and, you know, so we've had prolific winners who wanted to do different things on short circuits, which I admire. So, yeah, it's a balance there. So, you know, for Michael to do what he's done is incredible, and full respect.
I agree completely, and I enjoy watching him ride. The same I do with all the guys on the TT. We went this last year. We're not going this year, but it always, yeah, there's a lot of admiration for anybody who takes on that course.
Yeah, I think the people who follow roads and the people who don't, then and have never been, they don't really understand the format or what it takes. And reading in Motorcycle News before you picked me up today, I was reading, going back to Michael, that obviously he was quite a long way off the pace at Ross's Ranch.
Yes.
And they bring these, you pick things out of that, and obviously he paired up with a Costa, who's one of the fastest. And after practice and stuff, Michael, being Michael, said, I think you ought to try and get another partner, and I'll not bother because I'm that far off the pace. And in Acosta's words, he says, no, I want to be with you because I love watching you at the TT, and I love the way you ride. And I think people who watch racing don't think Acosta would probably know who Michael was. But I know for a fact over the years that all these people, and even Top Rack, who I know very well, such a fantastic guy who never changes from year to year. And his favourite racing is BSB. And that's come from his mouth, not mine. And he said to me, Rog, I'm coming to Cadwell. And when he came to Cadwell, and Yamaha said, you're not going, and Paul Denning said, you're not going, and then Locatelli turned up and rode Steve Rogers' bikes, 2 bikes we had ready for him. And on the third lap, he jumped the mountain like Vickers or somebody, or how Josh Brooks did it. And I'll never get Neil McKenzie saying, I raced here all my life and I never got that much air, you know. And then at the last time I saw Top Rack, he says, if he ever retires, he'll do a BSB at Cadwell.
I'd love to see him do that. We were there at the time. We'd all love to see it. It was so impressive to see him. We spoke to him at World Superbike this year, and he said exactly that. We were talking about new circuits like Cremona and things like that. And I said to him, it only takes you 4 laps to learn a circuit. He leant in and he went, 3.
Yeah, it was 3 at Cadwell.
It was 3 at Cadwell.
And then Locatelli went out with him, and he nearly lapped it.
Locker was just like waving,
I'll wait for the crowd.
Yeah, I'll wait to the crowd.
But he studied Cadwell, he watches it, and he knew where it went, and he's soon on the pace.
That segues beautifully, actually, into when we look at overseas riders coming to the UK. Again, when you go down the YouTube rabbit hole and you end up on the Transatlantic Trophy. And the days when, I mean, I tried to work it out. I couldn't, did you ride it in the late 70s?
Yeah.
With Kenny and Steve Baker and the rest of them?
Yeah.
But then later on, I've got it written, there was yourself, Paul Lewis, Kenny Irons, Mark Phillips. Oh no, that was hang on. Where's my notes gone? That was a Spring Cup at Mallory. I tell you what that was. Kevin Schwantz was in that race
Yeah.
at Mallory Park. It's like, it must have been just after the Transatlantic. He stayed on and did.
Yeah, we had Kevin in a couple of BSBs and stuff.
I'd completely forgotten about that.
Yeah. Yeah, he raced against us on the Rothmans Hondas. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
eight,
yeah.
8 to a row at Mallory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you ever look at Silverstone, the front row at a GP, when me and Gardner, I was riding the RS 500 production bike. I think the front row, there's 10. And it's just amazing. But yeah, you're going back to for me, the Transatlantic, I think used to about 8 of us got picked.
Yeah.
And if you got picked for that, it made me the proudest man in Lincolnshire. I had my chest out, and to be involved against the Americans was amazing. It was an amazing series, and for the captain to get us all together, and whether it was Barry, whoever it was just it was an honour to be involved, and it was massive. I mean, we had 100,000, 80, 100 at Brands, Mallory, Oulton, and everybody followed it. And then not just that, we had all the races like Race of the Year at Mallory, Race of the Aces, Snetterton, the King of Brands. All these riders used to come and ride in them, and especially Race of the Year. I mean, for me to win the Race of the Year twice was one of the greatest accolades in my career. It was just a fantastic meeting to race in front of all those people, especially at Mallory and the buzz you get. It's a shame, such a shame that we lost places like Mallory and Croft and all these places. But, BSB with all the motorhomes and all the trucks and
the infrastructure that comes with it,
and the structures out there, and it's sad because I think my first venture from Cadwell, when I used to go on my road bike to Cadwell, my first time in my tent on my Norton Dominator was to Mallory with my mates, and going from Grimsby to Mallory felt like a long trek with your tent on the back, and then pitching up round Gerrard's, and then all of a sudden the next day, the Transatlantic or the Race of the Year, I was lucky enough to be there in my tent and cooking on my Primus when Cooper beat Aggo, and it was deafening, the crowd, and that's what pulls you into the sport, things like that. The thing that Cooper did that day against an MV was, he did it twice, obviously, on the Yamsel and a triple. So, and I got to know John, because John was one of my heroes, from my dad taking me to Cadwell and, watching all these great riders. So, and I still love to see John, because he always comes to Donington and we always get a chat. So,
wonderful.
It's nice. I'm one of these people who, when my dad took me to Cadwell, sorry, I'm straying off what we're
You
talking
doesn't
about.
matter. It's your show. You do it.
He took me at 7 years old, and I hung onto the fence, and everybody knows the story, but watching people go up the mountain on Manx Nortons and 7Rs and G50s, and then the sidecars come out with the Chris Vincents and the Skitsu and the Mini in Greenwood and all that, I went from that meeting and seen Aylward there, Ivy, Reed with my dad, and just from that day on, I rode my push bike to school, and that's all I ever dreamt about. All I ever dreamt about was getting a motorbike. And of course, you didn't have the opportunities then. So, obviously I didn't get a motorbike till I was 16. I think I'd saved 70 quid in my first year as apprentice electrician, and got my first road bike. So, I lasted about half a mile, I think. I've never been on a bike, so you don't know.
You don't know? Yeah, that's it.
But, that's what gave me the buzz. And made me want to do it. And, you know,
So when we raced at the Transatlantic, and it is such a shame that it's not there anymore, but the names that came across to race our big names, so as yourself, there was Barry, there was Granty,
Potter.
Dave Potter, there was so many that we'd put forward
Yeah. Ron
against,
Haslam.
and Ron, of course, against the likes of Kenny Roberts.
Yeah.
So you got Barry Sheene as world champion, Kenny Roberts as world
Mamola.
champion, Randy Mamola, Freddie
Yeah,
Spencer,
Freddie.
Mike Baldwin,
Yeah.
Steve Baker, Dave Aldana.
Yeah.
It was
Richard Slatter. We had loads of people who were winning in America come over. The bloke used to bring a pig over, Dale.
Dale Singleton.
Yeah. I remember him at Mallory with his pig in his arm at the Transatlantic thinking, what is this about?
What are your best memories from those days against those boys?
Well, obviously me win. I mean, the first round at Brands that year, obviously, again, 82 Suzuki. I had some great rides on the 750 Yamaha, don't get me wrong, but it was still, like I said before, like winning the Man of the Year. They were still all coming over that year, them years, and obviously to beat Freddie at Brands and then be second to Sheen in both races against such class. I mean, I couldn't get near Barry at Brands. I had to accept 2 second places, so which I was chuffed to bits with. So I remember that night, because the next day, Saturday, we travelled to Mallory and set up, and so I was having my caravan and car, same as Wayne. He was parked next to me doing sport races for Honda, and I went to the toilet at 2 in the morning and I was passing blood and I was in agony and tried to wake Wayne up, and he said, go back to sleep, don't be stupid. So anyway, I ended up at the local hospital 4 o'clock in the morning, and unbeknown to me, I had a kidney stone. So excruciating pain, if anybody's ever, they'll know what I'm talking about. So they put me on a drip, and that's the only thing that gives you a bit of freedom, because it's like a pebble in a stream.
Okay.
So passing water eases it. But I was on these big bottles of drips, and then obviously Wayne come in about 11 in the morning, and he said, are you coming out? I said, well, I'll sign myself out. So the nurse come, and she just put me a full bottle up. So she says, you can't sign yourself out. We don't want you to go, but you're not going till that bottle's done. So she went, typical Wayne, there's a valve on them. What's he do? He opens the valve. Of course, the bottle just goes like that, which is dangerous.
Absolutely.
Into my vein.
Yeah.
So I'm laid in bed, and I've never been on heroin, but probably that's what it's like. I felt I was on the ceiling. Yeah, shit, that. And so I had to sign this thing to get out. Wayne took me to the track, like up the caravan up, went to Mallory, parked up, and I was up all night drinking coffee because the pain was excruciating. So we went out in the first race the next day, and Barry got me on the last lap. We were both flying. We were somewhat like 20 seconds in front of everybody else. So before the next race, I was in my caravan. Have you heard this story? So he's not here to defend himself, so I'm sorry, Barry, but this is true. And my ex-wife and people will back me up. He came into my caravan with Franco, his dad, and Steph, his girlfriend. And he says, right, Roger the Lodger, he called me Lodger. And I used to stay at his house a bit and travel. And he says, you're the only person who's going to beat me and stop me winning 6 races, because we had Oulton the next day. So, and there was a massive amount of money that year, because I think it was John Player's Special Cigarettes. And I think nobody ever did it, but to win 6 races, they'd put this enormous amount of money up. And I was only I'd signed for Suzuki for 15,000.
Yeah.
And then I was earning the prize money, blah, blah, blah. So it was the first time I'd earned money. And he was on Akai Yamaha, I was on a factory Suzuki. So I tell Nick Goodison and Junior Collins what had happened. And they said, well, Rog, if you throw this factory ride up, if somebody finds out from Suzuki, I think your career will be over. So I didn't know what to do. I was in a right dilemma because I liked Barry, we were mates. So I went to the grid and then the lights changed and I thought I'm going to try and be first away, and I was. Anyway, for 12 laps round Mallory, all my board says was flipping plus nothing. And Nick Goodison said we broke lap record 8 or 9 times in the last laps. And then I come round and I thought, because you know what Mallory's like, straight through the elbow before the bus stop, and it's that fast to read your board. I thought, something different on there. So I went round the hairpin next lap, round the elbow, made sure I had a good look at my board, plus 15 seconds. What is that about? So I had a little look over my shoulder, nobody there. Anyway, another lap, and at Mallory, you probably remember that from the paddock, you could go down the middle up to the hairpin.
Yeah.
So, and people then like Barry's dad, Franco, and Stephanie, and my ex-sponsor, George Beale, they ended up at the hairpin. And as I come into the hairpin braking, they were all giving it that slow down because Barry had slipped off, lost the front, and remounted straight away and was still second. And I went round the elbow thinking, no way, Jose. You know, and obviously it was a shame that we didn't go to the bitter end, but I think breaking the lap record, I was pushing Barry to the limit and he was pushing me, and it was one of my obviously to win at any transatlantic race was a massive achievement against those guys. And the crowd that day was lovely sunny day, massive. So going round waving and the adulation was just beyond belief. And I've got to say this, it did sour our relationship a bit, me and Barry. And I didn't like that because you had to respect me for just starting in my career as a factory rider. And I was gutted that's the way it seemed for a while. We did pass the time of day, and I don't really know what the ins and outs were, but we went to Oulton Park the next day and I was exhausted. I was up another night and I was in that much pain. I could hardly function. And in the first race at Oulton, I was leading for about 10 laps and Barry was second again. And then I had the kiss of death from Murray Walker. I went round Cascades and I lived near Rugby then in Barkwith. And Murray said, and he comes from Rag. And I'll never forget the commentary because I've still watch it sometimes. And then I went round Shell and he wears a gold earring, 8-pointed star. And then I went through Knickerbrook and up over Deersleep, and I went into, Druids. And he has a star on his helmet, and he's been the star of the show, and he's down. And got it perfect on camera, and the bike goes over into the trees, and I hit the barrier, but I just didn't have the energy. I just didn't have anything left in my body. And I was supposed to be going in for an operation on the Thursday, and luckily kept drinking, and I passed the stone. You can pass it through your water, so But, you know, all stories, all good stories.
These are the stories that we enjoy, and this is why it's great to sit and chat with you. The one that you mentioned, the race of the year earlier on, that was another one that ended up on YouTube. There was Barry, there was Dave Potter, there was Granty, Pat Hennon, but there was also Christian Saron and Patrick Pons.
Yeah.
At the race of the year at Mallory Park in '77, and you look at that GP riders of that standard. That Christian obviously went on to 500cc Grand Prix with Galway Yamaha, and
I remember Christian because I was sat on the barrier with him at Gerard.
it's exactly right. We closed it.
He crashed one lap and I crashed 2 laps later, and I just went, "Oh well." And we sat there and watched the race together. And another time on my 350 Yamaha, Ago was on a comeback on the MV at Brands. He crashed at Paddock and I crashed 2 laps later and I sat with him. So it's amazing how your life goes.
But it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is, and that's the beauty of it all. And everything I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason we're sat here now. There's a reason we've become friends over the years, and the people that you become friends with, and the riders you've beaten, and the way that the whole fabric knits together.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool in this little sport of ours.
Yeah. And we all, that's what was weird about the Newark show in a way. You know, you've been retired that long, and obviously people see you on the telly and you're still involved and you do the little interviews with Whit and everybody. But, you know, I noticed at the Newark show, because Wayne and I presented the trophies at the end of the day. That was the last time on stage.
Yeah.
And I sensed people were nervous about meeting us. And I could tell that they had a bit of the shaking of it. And I said that to Emma on the way home. I found that quite strange, that they look up to you in that sort of way. And I remember being with my dad, I suppose, and then being just a normal spectator. I suppose that's how I felt if you were ever in the paddock and you were near anybody who was at the top of the game. But yeah, so I suppose I have to look at it that way, because now it's like you'll just walk into OMG garage, and where Paul Curran said, like, we have quite a strict rule in the garages that only like at quiet time you're allowed to bring anybody in, because it's a working environment.
Absolutely.
It's a serious job. We're trying to win the British Championship, and I get all that. But like, if I want to go see anybody, I just go and walk in anybody's garage, and yeah, it's like a complacent thing in a way, isn't it? And then, you know, we get all these people queuing for riders' autographs, and like Brands Hatch, they'll be walking from paddock, and the pit lane will be full, won't it? So, you know, and then I'll go out the back of the garage to go to the loo or something, and you won't get back for half an hour because I spend time. I've always been one, I can't walk past anybody, where I've worked with other riders who not hate the public, but they just don't want to do that. But I always think it's them who made me what I am, and they paid my wages at the end of the day. So I have total respect for people.
It's the right way to be. It's the same now. I'm very fortunate to do this, to do what I do, and to sit with, whether it's yourself, whether it's Simo, whether it's mechanics, whoever. It's not lost on me that what I get to do, and I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah.
But the respect for everybody that we have on the show.
Yeah.
And the 10 years, 12 years that it takes to build those relationships are so important. But then when you go to MotoGP or to World Superbike, that next level, when you say, like, you take it not for granted, but complacency is a little bit the right word.
Yeah.
Because you can go where you want to go at BSB, and everybody's welcoming, and come on in, come and have a brew, whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you go to, we saw you down at MotoGP when you went to see, just before you went to see Wayne.
Yeah.
And we're chatting around, and then you see, and it's like, well, there's Pecco there, and I'm having my photo taken with Pecco, and
you see Pedro Acosta and you go and sit with Hervé Poncharal,
Yeah.
which
I raced with Hervé.
is incredible.
Yeah.
The great thing, the connection, the other connection there, when I got the chance to sit with Hervé for an hour, the first thing I did was show him 2 pictures that were off the workshop wall of Chris Mayhew.
Yeah.
Because he worked with them with Dominique Saron.
Oh, he's well thought of, Chris.
So the introduction to Break the Ice with Hervé was showing him pictures from Chris's wall, courtesy of his son Phil, who's a great friend of mine, and that broke the ice.
Yeah.
So we're all only sort of 2 degrees of separation with the people that we
That's
met.
going back to a bit where, like, I work with younger riders and they haven't got a clue who you are, or they haven't got a clue who anybody was, say, 4 years ago, because I don't know, they're brought up in a different way. They're all in their own world, where I was never like that. When you come from a council house and you have to graft to get what you get, and you've always read about everybody since you've been this high kid. So, and in a way, that's what's made me stay with OMG this year. Because I feel I'm going with a rider who's grounded, who's works, and I'm going to have a big influence on him. So there's a lot of things in my life I just won't go with a rider for the sake of it.
No, I mean, I'm not anybody. I've not won anything. I've never raced, but I'm from a council house in Gainsborough. You're from a council house in Waltham, and here we are at Roger Burnett's place overlooking his golf course.
Yeah, and you picked me up in a little flat from Cleveland.
So that's it, and here we are.
Where did it all go wrong? Got my teammates here with all this. But that's always going to happen with Rog, because he had different ambitions to me and different outlook on life. Yeah. You know, people say things about Roger and I say, oh, whoa. You know, Roger come from the smallest place you'd ever live in Oulton, with 4 other brothers and sisters. And I said, you know, this guy has grafted for what he's got, and it's been part of his life, and probably took a lot out of him over the years. And he knew which way he wanted to go. He knew how to. He was one of the greatest. He could have been Roger in him. He had a GP career if he wanted it. He could have been a world champion if he'd have wanted it. Yeah. I think he had other ideas in his life, but he's done amazing, and I'm still proud to be his friend.
That's a beautiful thing. We had that when we sat on the settee across the way. The connection between you both is there for all to see. If you haven't seen that episode, there's 3 episodes. Go back in the archive. The 3 hours of Roger and Reg is just fantastic.
Andy gave me the opportunity for the last 2 years to go with Ryan.
Let's go down that street. Let's talk about that.
Big thing for me to leave McCombs.
It was, because you'd spent a lot of years with them, hadn't you? And you helped develop Taz and Jason. Taz taking his championship in 2021.
Yeah.
And working so closely with the riders.
And Jason as well, nearly doing it.
Exactly.
But
2 or 3
yeah,
times.
and I remember at Brands Hatch, I was talking to Roger at, you know, where the cafe is.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Ryan and what I was doing next year. And I just said that. And I'm sorry, Jason, if it comes over bad, but I think I'd gone as far as I could with Jason. And we were having different riders in the team to back him up. And Steve Rogers is one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with. And my wife has been with him for all the time he raced. So, you know, and we touched on Ryan. And I remember seeing Ryan at Assen on a superbike. And it's the nearest thing I can relate to Marquez or somebody. It was astonishing how he was riding a superbike. And I sort of picked up on it then, and I got to know Paul, his father, when we're out spotting, and and I've always took an interest in Ryan, and I could see what level he could be. And anyway, as far as the paddock was concerned, I think 2 years ago, after FHO, I don't think there was many teams who would have took him on, and that's not being disrespectful to Ryan.
It's not.
It was like, but somebody like Roger and myself can see different things in people because we've been around a long time. We know where talent is and how it works. So sometimes you need people to help you. So Roger touched on going with Ryan. And the biggest problem for me, and this is honest opinion, was letting Steve Rogers down after all he'd done for me. So I went home, I didn't agree on anything, and I mulled over it for quite a while. And then I said to Emma, I said, I'm going to tell Roger I'm going to do this if we can agree a deal. And, but I said when I tell Roger, I said, before he says anything to anybody, next phone call is Steve. And I said to Steve, blah, 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 thank you very much, but I want to try and challenge myself. The next opportunity that I'm being given by Roger and Ryan. So Steve says, thank you very much. I appreciate you, all what you've done. And 2 days later, this massive photo come through the post delivered by DHL or somebody. And Steve had signed it. Dear Rog, thanks so much for what you've done for us in our racing, and we're really going to miss you, Steve Rogers. And I thought, after telling him that and the respect he gave me, that wonderful, so, and that was it. So signed up for Ryan.
Tell me, we
And before we go talk anymore,
go on.
My phone never stopped ringing. The amount of WhatsApps and texts, what a dickhead I was like, and like even total people I respect in the paddock were just gobsmacked and thought I was the biggest dickhead in the world. So
For going to a talent that was obvious but needed work, why would you not?
well, I think because Ryan had quite a few opportunities and got known as crashing and blah, blah, blah. So
We covered his first year early last year, didn't we? When we sat down, we'd covered the first year off. So this second year with Ryan he was a lot more polished. He had everything in his armor to challenge for the championship, and you could see there were glimpses over the year of the talent that he had. He was leading the championship, or he was certainly top 3 in the championship at one point. That amazing.
we were leading it.
They were leading.
After Navarro.
Navarro, absolutely, after Navarro. It was an incredible start, wasn't
The
it?
dream start, yeah.
Yeah. Even then he tried to give it away on the second race, but he didn't, thankfully. And it's just little glimpses, you're like, oh no, here we go. But it didn't. Then it kind of went wrong at Donington when he broke his collarbone. But the peak of the year was those 3 wins at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, and then straight after Thruxton, 2 wins.
2 wins.
Second.
Yeah, 2 wins. And you thought it's that momentum thing. We spoke about it on the way in, didn't we? It's how
Momentum. Where we were going after Thruxton, his favourite track, my own track.
going to Cadwell Park.
Yeah.
Where the
And
year before, we'd had the issue, hadn't we, into Park.
Yes, with the Ducati. No, oh yeah, he crashed.
He crashed.
Lead.
Yeah. That was where I was going with it. Yeah. The little incident that he had.
So I knew Cadwell was going to be stressful. I knew, because I knew the build-up we were having with Ryan coming up to Cadwell was going to be stressful. So I knew, Roger and I discussed it. We knew we was on the crest of a wave. We knew no disrespect to any other rider at Cadwell, we knew we could blitz Cadwell, but we knew was nearly going to have Ryan on a leash. So Ryan and I, every race meeting, Ryan and I talk about it afterwards. We watch it. I make notes. He does. We analyse everything. And from the year before, we bring that to the next meeting if we haven't been there, like Cadwell. So we talk about it and we work on it, and a full tank of fuel into Park Corner and things like that. So we'd worked on that from middle of the year. So we were well prepared. So then we have off in qualifying with Bridewell at the Gooseneck, and then we show how good we are from coming through the pack, which nobody can do at Cadwell. It's impossible.
It's the hardest place to pass it.
So we come through and we qualify on the front row, don't we? So, and then, so me and Ryan sit together, we go up in the motorhome, no distractions. I said, look, you can do this time all day long, which was about 0.1 quicker than anybody, because he felt slow and that, but he was faster than everybody. And you're going to win the race by so many seconds. But no, we have to, everybody saw what happened, and we went into Coppice on the second lap, and we were quicker. We were so fast. We were faster than we've ever been into Coppice. We had more lean angle and
full tank of fuel.
And I can honestly say that's the most, working with any rider in my lifetime, that's the most gutted I've ever been. We could have had 3 wins at Cadwell comfortably, and we threw it away. And it's the only time I mean, obviously I went to the medical centre and make sure he was all right, but it's the only time I've been really angry with Ryan. And one of the only times that he didn't listen to me. Because we'd had other tracks like Snetterton, 2 years on the trot, his own track. And I can't say what went wrong there because it's not to be published, but he had 2 disasters there and it wasn't his own fault. So Cadwell, everything was in place. You know, I had strong words with him after the meeting and left. And then the next morning, Ryan rang me up and we sort of made up, and he realised what had happened and what he'd done. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I'm totally proud in 2 years to do what I did with him. And I don't throw stuff in people's faces who tell me I was a dickhead, but I think we made a point that a rider can be moulded, and if he's got the talent, he can be worked with. And we're not just work colleagues anymore, Ryan and I. We are like brothers, or I'm his second dad, or whatever you want to call me. And every week still now, he's in touch with me. Good. And total respect. And, you know, it's a shame I couldn't have gone to the next level, because I think he'll need it.
I think so.
I think 100%. But there's not many riders will do what Ryan did, like go to the party the night after the last race at Brands, then drive his own van home to his mum's the next day, load it up with all his stuff out of his bedroom and his bikes, and then he'd already organised an apartment that he's going to stay in near the factory, and get up at 3 o'clock Tuesday morning, get a boat and drive there, and start learning the language, get a citizenship, and put his whole life into it as a young man. That takes a lot of doing.
Absolutely.
On your own.
I couldn't agree more.
It takes a lot of balls to do that.
There's
Not many riders would do that.
No, but a lot of riders, depending on the teams they've been in, have had everything done for them.
Yeah.
So it's not their nature to go, actually, I'm going to upstick. Someone moved to Andorra, someone for whatever reason, and then all of a sudden to go to Italy to start a whole new life and really immerse yourself into it and show the team the willing to go, well, look, I'm here. This is what I'm prepared to do. I'm not flying in and out. I'm not based in Thetford.
No.
I'm based here.
Yeah, and it's a sad time for his mum and dad, Paul and Kerry, because they've been by his side since he started, and they have backed him all the way and looked after him. And, you know, I got a lot of respect for Paul and Kerry, and we've become mega friends. And,
Lovely people.
And, yeah, I know his dad's going to be gutted because he can't go racing, but he's going to be pleased for Ryan.
Of course it is.
And he's going to be pleased what we've all done as a package to take him to that level.
You turned him from having the crasher reputation into a BSB race winner and a championship contender.
Yeah. How good does that get?
It's exactly that.
And if he can continue now and learn by his faults, then he's got a lot of tracks to learn, but he's in the right team, and they're giving him plenty of practice, and they right behind him already by what he did in Milan on a flat tracker to do what he did, and then Ross's Ranch, what he's just done, and all the training he's doing out there. They are, after last year, they had a really bad time, the team, and I think the energy was so low, it was ridiculous. But they've got Ryan now, and they can't believe somebody as energetic and wants something like he does. So let's all get behind him in England, and good luck.
Well, as this goes out, I think we'll just have had by the time this goes out in early Feb, we'll have had the 2 tests at Jerez and Portimao that are coming up next week.
And then he gets nearly on a plane 2 days after, because they're taking him over to Australia early and getting him a private test.
Perfect. He needs it.
So what a team, eh?
Exactly right. You can't give him,
because he's got all these tracks to learn coming.
Yeah, that's right. Not only the electronics and the bike and the handling of the Ducati, but there's a whole host of brand new circuits.
And that's the biggest thing he said to me that I had trouble with. There's that first test he did after, like the last World Superbike, said there's so much to take in it, and so to ride it so much different to a BSB bike where you're just on the throttle, and you've got to rely on the traction control and everything. He said it fried his head a bit, but he will get round it.
Oh, he's an intelligent
Clever.
Lad. He knows what it's all about.
Yeah.
So you're spending 2025 back with Alan, Paul and Holly at OMG. You've got a new protege to work with.
Yeah, Alan Gardner has been, and Paul and Holly and the whole team. When I first went there, I didn't know anybody, probably Jim who's in the team. And that was about it. So I started, and they made me very welcome. And it's been an amazing time. And they've looked after me fantastic. And Paul mentioned this guy, Joe Talbot, who they were looking at. And I knew a lot of them knew him anyway. I didn't know him.
Alan supported him for a few years now.
Yeah, I'd seen him ride. And then Paul said to me it'd be good if he could work with him. And then Alan Gardner said, Rog, we want you, and you're our first priority. And I just said, well, I said to Paul, I can't sign just or come with you just for the sake of it. I need to make an impact on a rider. And if he thinks I'm an old fart and I don't know anything, then it's not going to work. You need a relationship like me and Ryan has, or Tom Hill and Kyle Wright. So I started to watch Joe a bit, and then I said to Paul, can you arrange a meeting for me and him to sit down together in the OSPO? I think, it was at Donington, I'm sure it was, before we went to Brands. So anyway, I didn't realise how grounded he was. And what I admire about him, he was still grafting for his dad. And his dad I met his dad, Andy, I think is Andy, is it? Yeah. So I just thought this is great. You know, somebody is not spoon-fed and he's still doing body work. And we had a really good chat, and I thought, that was interesting. Yeah, I like this. And then I said to him, do you fancy a track walk at Brands on the Thursday? And we track walked and we talked more. And there was a couple of corners, clearways, and onto the back straight. And I talked to him about a couple of lines and where I think you could improve. Just general chit chat.
Yeah.
And anyway, he improved and he diced for a lead at Brands, and you know, he's dead excited, and we've talked a lot, we've been in touch a lot. And obviously I said to Paul and Alan, I think I can have a massive input.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to listen. And, you know, I'm quite excited for the new year, new season. And I think we're going to be all right together. And it's the next challenge for me, and it's exciting.
I can't wait to see how it pans out. Let's talk about it later in the year.
Yeah.
Shall we sit down again and do something?
That'd be nice, yeah, towards the end of the year, see how we're getting on.
Let's do that.
I'm not talking to you if we're not going very well.
Funnily enough, Michael Rutter said that. He said the door might be open or it might not. We'll see how it goes.
I'm only joking. I'll always speak to you, and I'll always be there to if you need me for a chat. And I like the comments we get and the people who like to watch on these chats. So.
I think we're going to get some great comments, I think, over this. Just one final question from one of our great patrons. We have a Patreon page that helps support the podcast, that people contribute monthly. One of our fine patrons, a gentleman called Simon Breeze, he wanted to ask, what was the best piece of advice that you gave Ryan over the last couple of years, and did he listen?
Yes. The biggest change I made with Ryan is when he built himself up over the days coming up to the race. He'd start off, say, if I shared an hotel with him, like we'd have dinner, the crack was mighty, and the build-up was I noticed towards the final day, he'd always get more serious. So basically, I could see his his riding would change, and the more serious he got, the more rigid he was on the bike. And the biggest change we made was making him enjoy it, and getting him on the grid and getting a smile on his face instead of shaking in his boots. And once he got that, and he'd come back and tell you, that was much better, and much more enjoyable. And there's a couple of other things, but they're going to be my secrets, because I'm going to pass a lot on to Joe to make him better. And I want to keep that contained. And then if Joe does well, somebody might pay me more to go. The wages might.
The wages need to what? For the last part of it, do you want to put those on?
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. You might be seeing me in these next year. Are you there, Dave? I might have to wear glasses, but I have got them slight tint blue, Alan and Paul. Oh, yeah, that's better.
I tell you what, look at those.
What do you think, people? Am I ready?
This suit you a treat. And we've waited for this. We've waited for this point. We've spoke about it on the way in. It's
forgot.
Like, I know, I could see them sat there, and I know Roger just kindly brought in some lunch for us as well. So we'll keep those on. You look fantastic. Just be careful with those little varifocals at the minute, just while you get used to them.
Yeah, I dropped them 2 mil. That's technical for me.
That's as technical as we get. Brilliant, Reg, thank you.
Thank you.
What an absolute privilege. Always a pleasure to see you. We wish you continued health. Great news with Joe. Love to Emma as well, and we'll catch up at the BSB circuits across the year.
And thanks everybody for listening, and Happy New Year to you all. And it's always a pleasure for me, and it's always a pleasure to see you in the paddock. And look after yourselves. Have a great year. Keep well.
Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Roger Marshall. Thanks, Reg.
A huge thank you to Roger Marshall for his time. Some great stories from the TT, the Northwest, the Ulster, the British Championships, and those Transatlantic Trophy races. What a fantastic episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. A big thank you to Roger Burnett and Laceby Manor for looking after us, and Roger for using his office to do the chatting, and of course to Glenn and Andrew from On the Podium Prizes. As we said at the top of the show, make sure you check them out on thepodiumprizes.com and on Facebook and Instagram. And also, if you haven't, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Finally, before we go, next week's guest is another man who is in motorcycle racing royalty and a man who's nestled in history of the 500cc Grand Prix world. It's the 1987 500cc world champion, Wayne Gardner. Wayne joins us direct from Cannes next week, and I can't wait to bring that show to you either. It's an absolute joy. We cover plenty, but there's more to be covered, so it could well be a part 2 for this one. That's next Wednesday. Until then, thank you so very much for watching, and please do look after yourself. Bye-bye.